Hello and welcome to LSU Focus. It is post-match reaction show time after Liverpool have just drawn 0-0 at home with Manchester United, and if we're all being honest, it was just a bit boring. It was stale, it was stagnant. Liverpool were lacking in end products whenever they did manage to create any chances. And if anything, we've just got to be thankful that we still came away with a point and we still managed to take 2 points off of our rivals, Manchester United. We stopped them developing any greater lead over us in the Premier League table. It also, clips their wings a little bit in terms of their title ambitions. They've been riding quite the wave over the last few weeks, all the way to the top of the Premier League table. They're now in a position where, of course, if Man City win their games in hand, and we'll see what happens with that game between them and Crystal Palace this evening, but if City do win the games that they've got over their title rivals, then they will jump back to the top of the table. So it's a little bit of a reality check for Man U, and in that respect, it does kind of represent a good result for Liverpool, but of course, this was an opportunity to swing the tide all the way back in our favour, to go back level on points with them. Of course, with our goal difference, we would have gone above them in the table, and to kind of re-establish the order that has been settled over the last few seasons and has looked ever so slightly like it might be upset over the last few weeks. So in a way, I am a little bit positive. I'm maybe not as downbeat as I would have been, for example, if, say, Liverpool were in a title race with City and Man U were 30 points behind, in which case you would have very much seen this as 2 points dropped. You would have been thinking we need to be winning these types of matches. But it is just disappointing because of the way Liverpool played and the fact that it does feel like Man U were there for the taking, I think, today. Today's performance from them showed that they've perhaps flattered to deceive a little bit over the last few results. They've like I said, they've been riding a wave and they've been getting wins when maybe they haven't been playing well and they haven't necessarily deserved to take all 3 points. And this was a real chance to put them in their place and show that there is still a reasonably sized gulf in quality between the two teams. And there were glimmers of it today as well. Certainly in the early stages, I thought the inclusion of Shaqiri earlier on in the match was a masterstroke from Jurgen Klopp in some ways. It allowed us to be a lot more in Man U's face. It gave us an extra presence in attack. It drew bodies out of the defence as well, because they couldn't just be worried about marking Salah and marking Mane and marking Firmino. They had the deeper threat of Shaqiri to deal with, and of course with Thiago coming in, we've got more creation from deep there. I think maybe the issue was that we just didn't quite have it coming from the fullbacks in the same way that we normally did. I think if Trent had been firing, of course there's a kind of an ongoing narrative with how he hasn't really got going at any point so far this season. And if Andrew Robertson had just been a little bit more on point with his deliveries, he still got in good positions, unlike Trent, who was just out of the game for most of it. Robertson still threatened at times, but just didn't quite find the right pass, the right ball, the right cross when he needed to, and as a result squandered some of the opportunities that he did get. But you feel like with the threat of Shaqiri, who was a little bit more advanced than the other midfielders, the deep line creation of Thiago, if you'd added, attacking, aggressive fullbacks into the mix, then maybe that would have been just about enough for Liverpool to pull Man U's defence this way and that, and eventually rip them apart and get the goal. But unfortunately, I think everything just goes through a little bit too centrally, which, if you ask me, is better than what we've been doing over the last few games. We've seen a lot of going out wide and then just hit and hope crosses into the box from the fullbacks and from midfielders as well. We've seen Henderson be pushed out into wide areas and just lob balls into the box. The same for Gini Wijnaldum and all manner of other players in this team. Curtis Jones has been guilty of it as well while he's been getting his start. So it was good to see us shake things up a little bit, although, never mind. Although, obviously, Liverpool getting things wrong in a different way is not exactly a massive positive. The fact of the matter is, while what we did was different to what hasn't been working so far, it still wasn't quite enough to actually create any goal-scoring chances. And it felt like when we did get into threatening positions, our players were just second-guessing themselves a little bit. There were plenty of times where Firmino and Salah were mostly guilty of this, getting the ball in the box in an area that could have been dangerous and just taking too many touches, just taking too long to set themselves, as if they're second-guessing their abilities, as if they don't believe they're good enough to just occasionally put your boot through the ball first time and see what happens. When Salah was in form, especially in his first season at Liverpool, he would just shoot on sight and by and large it would go in. Firmino is very much, an interesting player for Liverpool. Sometimes he's in good goal-scoring form, sometimes he isn't. But when he is hitting the target on a regular basis and finding the back of the net, he's doing it through being a bit more, playing on instinct a little bit more than trying to be cute about it. And I felt today he and Mo Salah were both just trying to be too cute, set themselves perfectly. There's the chance fairly late on in the game where Mo Salah receives the ball from Firmino around about 8 yards out, very central. And if he goes first time with his right foot, it's at least a difficult one for the goalkeeper to save as long as he gets it on target. But instead what he does is he takes it onto his left, he sets himself, he shimmies a little bit this way and that, tries to throw the defenders off, and ends up putting it out through Harry Maguire's legs and wide for a corner, I think it was in the end. But you just feel like if he'd snatched at the chance a bit more, if he'd been a little bit more clinical, then we come away with a goal, and maybe we come away with all 3 points. And like I said, it just feels like the confidence is gone a little bit out of our attack. It feels like the last few games and the way we have been so poor in front of goal is starting to take a mental toll on them, that they maybe feel like they're acknowledging that they're not in form and they're playing as if they're not in form. And what you really need them to do is just ignore that and go into every game as if it's a new challenge and just play as they have been over the last few years. Because if they did that, you feel like they would have found their way through today. It just felt like when Liverpool did create chances, and they were rare, we didn't really get through Man U's defence as much as we would have liked. But when we did, we didn't make the most of it. And that's the issue in these types of games against a team. Even if Man U aren't the best team in the world, and I don't think they are at the moment, they are still, in a little bit of a rut, despite what the league table may tell you. In terms of performances, they're not that good. But even when they aren't playing well, you're still not going to get many chances against them. It's rare to have as many shots as we did today against Manchester United. And if you get given that many opportunities, then you have to put them away, because they're not going to give you any more. And that goes for all the games against the big sides where we have to be picking up points, especially now that we've got this deficit on Manchester City. We can't rely on beating all the smaller teams and then just getting draws and taking 2 points here and there off of our rivals. We've got to be beating them as well now. When Man City come to Anfield in just a few weeks' time, a draw's not going to be good enough. We need to get 3 points in that game and get a result over them. But if we can't put away chances like we have been struggling to do so, not just today, but in the last few games, then you're not going to get those results, and you're not going to end up with the Premier League title, unfortunately. So going forward, like I said, it wasn't more of the same. Liverpool changed the way they played, and the introduction of Shaqiri was key to that. And of course, the emergence of Thiago Alcantara, who's finally getting some game time in the first team after the injury that he picked up in the early stages. But it still wasn't quite good enough, because at the end of the day, you can create as many chances as you want. But if when you finally do get it to your forwards in the box, they fluff their lines every single time, you're still not going to score off the back of them. So there's something to be worked on there, but it does feel like it's identifiable. You can see where the issues are, and it felt like a bit of a step in the right direction. And listen, maybe if we were playing against Newcastle or West Brom today, then we would have got it over the line. But just unfortunately, we were playing against a Man U team that didn't quite give us enough opportunities for our forwards to eventually find their range. So going forward, still not great. If you had to give it a grade, I'd say C-, if we're being honest. They still created chances. They still threatened. They got into Man U's half. It was different. It was a little bit more creative than it's been over the last few games. But at the end of the day, the ball doesn't end up in the back of the net, so you can't really give them too much credit for that. I thought looking further back, though, defensively, Liverpool were pretty impressive. I was worried seeing Jordan Henderson in the side, also because of what it would have changed in terms of the way we played going forward. I think actually the midfield didn't look as off balance as it has done in the past. With Jordan Henderson dropped into the centre-half role, I think having Shaqiri there, but also Wijnaldum and Thiago operating in a double pivot looked like it worked very well. So that's at least one other problem Liverpool have solved, I think, going forward. While Henderson is being used as an extra centre-half, if we're not going to sign one in the January window, and that's looking less and less likely by the day, then 4-2-3-1 might be the way to go forward. I think it just works in terms of the overall dynamic. It doesn't look like we miss Henderson as much. And defensively, he was generally sound, although I think most of the credit has to go to Fabinho, who was my man of the match personally for both teams. If we're being perfectly honest, I don't think any Man U player really did enough to warrant getting any kind of award out of it. But whenever Man U did look like they were going to threaten, Fabinho was always on the scene. He read the play very well. I spoke before the game about how Bruno Fernandes is obviously key to everything Man U do. That's not me, coming out with some kind of mad revelation. Everyone knows that. Jurgen Klopp spoke about it in his press conference before the game, and Fabinho was very much alive to that. He was shutting down Bruno Fernandes at all the key areas. He was making brilliant tackles as well. Never really gave away any stupid fouls. Of course, he gets the yellow card for the one on Cavani, but I think that was the right thing to do. With Man U breaking, looking threatening, they were in the ascendancy a little bit at that late stage in the game with about 15 minutes to go, and our defence was in disarray positionally. Everyone was all over the show. So Fabinho basically does the right thing by thinking, well, if you can't intercept the ball, intercept the man, take the yellow card, and we'll work it out from there. And obviously Man U don't score score from the free kick after all, which is a little bit of a relief. But I thought in general, Fabinho just marshalled everything very well, looked like a proper centre-half. We keep forgetting, I think, that this lad is, at the end of the day, a centre midfielder. And before that, he wasn't a centre defender either. He was a right back. So this is still pretty much completely new to him. He's obviously done it in a few games in the past for Liverpool, but on a regular basis like this, in massive games, for him to repeatedly be turning in not just solid, decent, acceptable performances, but to be the man of the match, which is what I think he was, is incredibly impressive. So I think a lot of kudos has to go to Fabinho, because I think without him, we probably don't win that. We probably don't draw that game even. I think Man U would probably have managed to find a way through a makeshift defence. So I'm very thankful to him for that. Alisson makes some good saves as well, maybe none that you wouldn't expect him to make. The one with his feet from Bruno Fernandes is obviously very impressive. Gets down, does the right thing, which is fantastic. There are some goalies, certainly some Liverpool goalies in the past, who you can certainly imagine letting that one in. So it's possible that he has salvaged technically 3 points there for us, because it's a point gained and 2 dropped for Manchester United. But good to see from him. I thought Robertson, like I said, going forward, it just didn't drop for him. His crossing was slightly off, but at least he was offering something. And I thought defensively, you couldn't have too many issues. Like I said, Trent is Trent at the moment. It's just not working out. And I do think that maybe we need to look at bringing Nico Williams in for a few games. I think Trent is definitely suffering from long COVID. You get the feeling that obviously he came straight back into the side after he had it over the summer and he'd done his isolation period and everything. But you see now teams like Newcastle, they're giving players extended breaks. Saint-Maximin hasn't even featured for Newcastle since he fell ill with the coronavirus. And maybe if Trent suffered now in the same way that he had over summer in terms of getting the illness, then we would have played it a little bit more safe and we would have given him more time off, because he just isn't the same at the moment. And I think we've got Burnley in midweek now on Thursday night, and then a cup game again against Manchester United next weekend. So we've then got a few games where you feel like we can maybe afford to rotate a little bit, not massively, but bringing in Nico Williams and giving him a bit of opportunity, either giving Trent a rest or just maybe the kick up the arse that he needs to get the level of his performances up, might be a wise move from Jurgen Klopp. But as I said, it's just not going for the kid at the moment, and I don't really want to go too much into what's going wrong, because it is, you know, you'd feel like a broken record if you did that every week, because it's very much the same problems every single time, and just hopefully Jurgen Klopp and the coaching staff can find some kind of way around it. But in general, it wasn't an awful performance for Liverpool. The only place where I can really criticise us was finishing in the box. That was where it all fell apart. Players just didn't quite have the aggression and the self-belief they needed to just stick the ball in the back of the net. But apart from that, Liverpool were relatively well drilled. They caused Manchester United problems, kept them under pressure, didn't get, you know, in too many sticky situations when Man U were countering. I thought once Cavani came on, that could have caused plenty of problems. He's a high-quality footballer. If you give him one chance, he will almost definitely stick it in the back of the net if he's given enough time and space. So we did well to avoid that as well. Kept Bruno Fernandes quiet. So all in all, not a bad performance. Certainly better than what we've seen over the last few games. And of course, taking 2 points off Manchester United means that the 2 points that we've dropped doesn't quite have as much of a sting to it as it would have done if we'd been playing some lower table fodder. So it's not the worst result in the world. And on the balance of things, coming off the back of a bad patch for Liverpool, some poor performances, to just get it over the line and get a draw, and then, you know, you look to improve from there, might be, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty decent result. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the videos, as always, you know what to do by now. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LSU Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back soon with the pre-match content for that midweek match against Burnley. Until then, bye for now.